Kellen Winslow Jr., the son of a legend, the monster in plain sight. Kellen Winslow Sr. was a revolutionary tight end who changed the position forever, a Hall of Famer whose innovative route running and pass catching ability helped redefine what it meant to be a tight end in the NFL. His son, Kellen Winslow Jr., was blessed with the same physical gifts and a famous last name that opened doors and created opportunities that most young athletes could only dream of. From an early age, it was clear that Winslow Jr. had inherited his father's athletic ability. He was tall, fast, and had excellent hands, and he seemed destined to follow in his father's footsteps. At the University of Miami, Winslow Jr. was a standout player who helped lead the Hurricanes to a national championship in 2001. He was known for his athleticism and his ability to make spectacular catches, and he quickly became one of the most highly regarded tight end prospects in college football. When he declared for the NFL draft after his junior season, he was selected 6th overall by the Cleveland Browns in the 2004 draft. Winslow Jr.'s early NFL career was marked by flashes of brilliance and moments of controversy. He was a talented player who had the ability to take over games, and he was selected to the Pro Bowl in 2007. But he was also known for his arrogance and his confrontational attitude, and he had several run-ins with coaches and teammates. Despite these issues, he was still considered to be one of the better tight ends in the league, and he had a productive, if tumultuous, career that lasted for a decade. But the story of Kellen Winslow Jr. is not really about football. It is one of the darkest and most disturbing stories of any athlete in modern history. While his on-field career was marked by talent and controversy, his off-field life was a horror show of sexual predation and violence that would eventually land him in prison for the rest of his life. After his career ended, a series of horrific crimes came to light that revealed Winslow Jr. to be a serial rapist and sexual predator who had used his fame and physical size to intimidate and assault vulnerable women. The charges against Winslow Jr. were as numerous as they were disturbing. He was accused by multiple women of rape, kidnapping, and other sexual offenses, and the details that emerged during his trial were monstrous. The victims included a homeless woman who was living in a tent, an underage girl, and several other women who were targeted because they were vulnerable and unlikely to be believed. Winslow Jr. was a predator who used his celebrity status and his imposing physical presence to intimidate his victims and to convince them that no one would believe their accusations against a famous athlete. The trial revealed a pattern of behavior that was as calculated as it was evil. Winslow Jr. would target women who were alone and vulnerable, often approaching them under the pretense of offering help or assistance. He would then use his size and strength to overpower them and assault them, often threatening them with violence if they tried to resist or report the crime. In 2019, Winslow Jr. was convicted of multiple counts of forcible rape and other charges and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. The story of Kellen Winslow Jr. is the ultimate cautionary tale of a Nepo baby gone wrong. He was given every opportunity, every advantage, and he used his platform not for greatness, but to commit unspeakable acts of violence and cruelty. His name, once associated with football royalty, is now forever linked to one of the most disturbing criminal cases in the history of American sports. Bobby Carpenter, the first-round bust with the famous father. Bobby Carpenter's story is a more traditional tale of a failed NFL Nepo baby, but it is no less instructive as an example of how a famous name can sometimes lead to unrealistic expectations and ultimately to disappointment. His father, Rob Carpenter, was a solid and dependable running back who played in the NFL for a decade, primarily with the New York Giants and the Houston Oilers. Rob was not a superstar, but he was a reliable player who had a long and successful career, and he was respected throughout the league for his work ethic and his professionalism. Bobby was a star linebacker at Ohio State, where he played for legendary coach Jim Tressel and was a key member of some of the most successful teams in the program's history. He was a team captain and a leader on defense, and he was known for his high football IQ, his leadership ability, and his understanding of the game. Bobby was not the most physically gifted player on the field, but he was smart, tough, and coachable, and he had a knack for being in the right place at the right time. In the 2006 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys, led by legendary coach Bill Parcells, made Carpenter a surprise first-round pick, selecting him 18th overall. The selection was immediately questioned by draft analysts and fans who saw Carpenter as a solid but not spectacular player, someone who was not worthy of a first-round selection. Many observers felt that the Cowboys had reached for Carpenter, falling in love with his intangibles and his bloodline rather than his pure athletic ability. Parcells, who was known for valuing tough, smart, coachable players over pure athletes, saw a lot of Rob Carpenter in his son Bobby. He believed that Bobby had the intelligence and the work ethic to be a successful NFL player, and he was willing to bet a first-round pick on that belief. But the younger Carpenter was never able to live up to the expectations that came with being a first-round pick. The problem was that Bobby lacked the elite speed and athleticism that are necessary to be a truly impact player at the NFL level. He was often a step slow in coverage, and he struggled to keep up with the faster and more athletic offensive players that he faced every week. He was also not big or strong enough to be an effective run stopper, and he found himself caught between positions, not quite fast enough to be a coverage linebacker and not quite big enough to be a run-stopping linebacker. Carpenter spent 4 disappointing seasons in Dallas, bouncing between inside and outside linebacker and never really establishing himself as a consistent contributor. He was often a liability in pass coverage, and he was frequently targeted by opposing offenses who saw him as a weak link in the Cowboys' defense. After 4 seasons of underwhelming performance, he was traded to the Miami Dolphins, where he spent 1 season before his career quietly ended. Bobby Carpenter's story is a common one in the NFL, and it illustrates the dangers of overdrafting a player based on intangibles and pedigree rather than pure talent. He was a good football player, but not a great one, and the pressure of being a first-round pick, combined with the expectations that came with his last name, created a bar that he could never clear. Jerry Rice Jr., the impossible shadow of the GOAT. Imagine being the son of the greatest football player of all time, a man whose records may never be broken and whose name is synonymous with excellence and perfection. That was the reality for Jerry Rice Jr., the son of Jerry Rice Sr., who is widely considered to be the greatest wide receiver in the history of the NFL and arguably the greatest football player of all time. Jerry Rice Sr. is a statistical god, the owner of nearly every significant receiving record in the NFL. He caught 1,549 passes for 22,895 yards and 197 touchdowns during his 20-year career, numbers that are so far ahead of everyone else that they seem almost fictional. He was a 3-time Super Bowl champion, a 13-time Pro Bowler, and a 10-time All-Pro, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. Jerry Jr. was a decent college player who played at UCLA and UNLV, but he was never able to match his father's level of excellence. He was a walk-on who earned a scholarship through hard work and determination, and he had some good moments during his college career. He had good hands and was a precise route runner, traits he undoubtedly learned from his father, who was known for his meticulous attention to detail and his perfectionist approach to the game. But Jerry Jr. lacked the one thing that made his father a legend: elite, game-breaking speed. Jerry Rice Sr. was not the fastest receiver in the league, but he had enough speed to stretch the field and to create separation from defenders. Jerry Jr., on the other hand, was significantly slower than his father, and he lacked the ability to get open against elite college defenders, let alone NFL defensive backs. This lack of speed limited his effectiveness and made it clear that he would never be able to compete at the highest level of the sport. After going undrafted in 2014, Rice Jr. was invited to a tryout with the Baltimore Ravens, a moment that was captured by the media and that seemed to offer a glimmer of hope that the Rice legacy would continue in the NFL. The tryout was a big story, with reporters and cameras following his every move, and there was a sense that the football world was rooting for him to succeed. He had a few good moments during the preseason, making some nice catches and showing flashes of the route running ability that had made his father famous. But it quickly became clear that Jerry Jr. did not have the physical tools to compete at the NFL level. He was not fast enough to get separation from NFL defensive backs, and he was not big or strong enough to be an effective possession receiver. He was cut by the Ravens before the start of the regular season, and he had a brief stint with the Washington Redskins practice squad before his professional football career came to an end. The story of Jerry Rice Jr. is not one of failure in the traditional sense, but rather one of impossible expectations and the burden of living up to a legacy that was simply too large to match. He was a long shot to make the NFL from the beginning, and the fact that he even got a tryout is a testament to his work ethic and his determination. But his story is a powerful example of how a famous last name can be both a blessing and a curse. Todd Marinovich, the quarterback in a test tube. The story of Todd Marinovich is one of the most tragic and cautionary tales in the history of sports, a story that goes far beyond football and touches on issues of parental obsession, childhood trauma, and the dangers of trying to engineer a perfect athlete. Todd was not just a Nepo baby in the traditional sense. He was a science experiment, the product of his father's relentless obsession with creating the perfect quarterback. Marv Marinovich was a former NFL player who had become a conditioning guru and a strength coach, and he was obsessed with the idea of creating the perfect athlete. When his son Todd was born, Marv saw an opportunity to put his theories into practice, and he engineered Todd's entire life with the singular goal of making him the greatest quarterback who ever lived. From the moment he was born, Todd's diet, his exercise regimen, his sleep schedule, and his entire social life were controlled by his father. Todd was not allowed to eat sugar or white flour, and his diet consisted of only the most nutritious and carefully selected foods. His days were filled with a relentless schedule of stretching, weightlifting, and quarterback drills, and he was not allowed to participate in normal childhood activities like playing with friends or watching television. Marv believed that every moment of Todd's life should be dedicated to making him a better quarterback. The experiment seemed to work, at least on the surface. Todd was a high school phenom who set numerous records and was widely considered to be the best high school quarterback in the country. He went on to USC, where he had a successful college career and was a Heisman Trophy candidate. In 1991, he was selected in the first round of the NFL Draft by the Los Angeles Raiders. But the pressure of his father's relentless obsession had created a deeply troubled young man who was struggling with issues of identity, autonomy, and mental health. As soon as Todd was out from under his father's thumb and had some freedom for the first time in his life, he rebelled in the most destructive way possible. He began using drugs, starting with marijuana and eventually progressing to harder substances like cocaine and heroin. Todd's NFL career quickly spiraled out of control as his drug use became more and more problematic. He was suspended multiple times for violating the league's substance abuse policy, and he was unable to focus on football or to perform at the level that was expected of him. He was out of the league in just 2 years, a spectacular bust who became a symbol of wasted potential and the dangers of parental obsession. The story of Todd Marinovich is a heartbreaking look at the psychological toll that can be exacted on a child who is raised not as a son, but as a project. He was a player who had all the physical tools to be great, but he was never given the chance to develop as a person or to make his own choices about his life and his career. His failure was not his own. It was the inevitable result of a childhood that was stolen from him in the name of athletic glory. The coaching carousel, a family business. Nepotism in the NFL is not limited to the players on the field. It is rampant and systemic in the coaching ranks, where the league is filled with coaching families and dynasties, where sons follow their fathers into the profession with little regard for qualifications or merit. While there are some notable success stories, like the Shanahans and the Harbaughs, there are far more examples of unqualified sons being handed jobs they did not earn. This family business approach to coaching has a number of negative consequences that extend far beyond just individual cases of nepotism. It creates a significant barrier to entry for qualified minority coaches, contributing to the league's ongoing diversity problem and perpetuating a system where coaching positions are often passed down through family lines rather than being awarded based on merit. The issue is particularly acute with offensive and defensive coordinator positions, where sons of famous coaches are often fast-tracked into high-paying, high-profile jobs with little to no experience. These positions are often seen as stepping stones to head coaching jobs, which means that nepotism at the coordinator level can have long-term consequences for the diversity and quality of the league's head coaches. The culture of nepotism in NFL coaching is a form of institutional corruption, a system where connections are more important than qualifications and where family ties can trump talent and hard work. It is a system that rewards mediocrity and stifles innovation, and it is a major reason why the NFL's coaching ranks are not as diverse or as talented as they could be. The Bosa brothers and the Mannings. When the bloodline is blue chip. Of course, not all Nepo babies fail, and there are some notable examples of football families where the sons have not only lived up to their father's legacies, but have actually surpassed them. The Bosa family is a modern-day football dynasty that represents the best-case scenario for NFL nepotism. Their father, John, was a first-round pick in 1987 and had a solid NFL career. His two sons, Joey and Nick, were both top 3 picks in the draft and have become two of the most dominant defensive players in the league. The Manning family is perhaps the most famous example of a successful football bloodline. Archie Manning was a star quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, and his two sons, Peyton and Eli, both became NFL quarterbacks and both won multiple Super Bowl championships. Peyton is widely considered to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, while Eli won 2 Super Bowls with the New York Giants. These success stories are often cited as evidence that nepotism can work and that football talent can indeed run in families. The Bosas and the Mannings are football royalty because they combine their genetic gifts with an incredible work ethic and a deep love of the game. But it is important to note that these are the exceptions, not the rule. They are successful not because of their last names, but because they are genuinely great football players who just happen to have famous fathers